Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Kirby's Dreamland 2, brought to us by Nintendo. While it's the second game in the Kirby's Dreamland franchise, it's actually the sixth game in the Kirby series to be released, just following up a month after the PAL release of Kirby's Avalanche. Kirby's Dreamland 2 was the first of the Game Boy games to allow you to suck up the enemies and take their powers, as well as it introduced us to Kirby's animal friends, Coo, Rick, and Kine. Throughout the run of the game, I will be collecting the rainbow shards so that we can face off with the true final boss of Kirby's Dreamland 2. As we begin the game, we'll be dropping into world number 1 here, and each of the worlds is broken up into multiple different levels, represented by the doors on the main hub level. After completing a level, you'll open up the door to the next level, and so on and so forth, until eventually getting to the boss battle. After defeating the boss, you'll be able to move on to the next world. For the most part, the gameplay remains largely the same from Kirby's Adventure on the NES. You do have the ability to suck in enemies and take their powers, depending upon if the enemy has a power for you to steal. And you do now have those animal friends that you'll be able to gather throughout the course of the game, and we actually need to in order to get those rainbow shards. At the end of a stage, you do have a little bit of a bonus game that if you time it right and press the button at the right moment, you'll be able to launch up higher and higher and potentially get an extra life or at least a few other rewards while blasting your way up. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see your current score, your health, the amount of lives you have, the level you're currently on, or world you're currently on, as well as a meter that counts the stars you've collected. Collecting the stars and filling up that meter will grant you an extra life. Throughout this run, I'm going to do my best to get all of the rainbow shards in the most efficient way I can, and that begins here, after taking out this enemy, which will give us the fire ability, which we don't need for this first upcoming rainbow shard. We need to make sure, though, that we have Rick the hamster. Rick ends up moving a little bit faster than Kirby on land, as well as he doesn't end up slipping on ice. Right after battling that enemy and getting Rick, we're going to grab the parasol ability and do my best to hold on to this so we can use it in order to grab ourselves the first rainbow shard that's coming up in the third level of world number 1. As we begin the third level of world number 1, it's a pretty straightforward level to begin with. You can drop down and grab the maximum tomato, which will fully replenish your health. When you go inside this room here, start climbing on up, watching out for a few enemies along the way. The parasol ability that we have will help us out. This is the room where we need that parasol ability. Drop on down these platforms and then break open these blocks in order to grab the first of the rainbow shards. All the rainbow shards throughout the course of the game require either a certain animal buddy or at least a certain ability in order to grab them. What's cool though is, even if you don't have those abilities and you complete a stage and you have to come back later, once you grab a rainbow shard, you can exit a stage. If you've already beaten a level one time, you can exit out as soon as you grab that rainbow shard, so that speeds up things a little bit when you have to do a bit of backtracking. After completing the third level, we've unlocked the boss door, and we have Wispy Wood here, or at least a version of Wispy Wood. He has kind of a mask on and some weird glasses that we're going to end up knocking off using our parasol ability. And we can kind of just stand right up next to him in order to keep hitting him with the parasol ability, only having to turn around a little bit in order to destroy some of the apples that normally you could grab in order to throw out at him in order to damage him. But since we have parasol, we're easily able to beat him and move on to World 2. As we begin world number 2 here, it's a forest-themed stage, but the platforming remains largely unchanged from the previous world. As we go through the first little bit of the first stage here in world number 2, we'll be eventually making it to a door, and we'll be switching off our animal friends from Rick the hamster over to the bird. One thing I absolutely love and adore about Kirby's Dreamland 2, and thus Kirby's Dreamland 3, which is released a little bit later on, is the animal buddies that you end up getting. Each one of them has a different reaction to the abilities that you end up having. So Kirby uses the ability one way, and then each animal friend also uses the ability in a slightly different way. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so beneficial, but either way, the fact that you have all those different animations for the abilities is one of the many reasons why Kirby's Dreamland 2 has such charm. As we begin level number 2 here in World 2, right below the entrance is actually where the rainbow shard is located, but we can't grab it quite yet because we don't have the right ability, so we're just going to continue on through the level a little bit, and once we beat it once, we'll come right back, and once we have that ability, we'll be able to easily grab that rainbow shard. As far as movement is concerned, the bird Ko is easily my favorite because you have a lot of ability to be able to get in between a lot of the perils like the spike gordos or other boxes and stuff in your way. So a lot of maneuverability with the bird allows me to kind of get through areas a bit quicker. Grabbing the spike ability throughout the level, we're now going to go right back into level number 2 since we have that, and go into this door right here, and this will allow us to break open the floor and grab ourselves the second rainbow shard. Like I mentioned earlier, once you have a rainbow shard, if you already completed the level, you can just pause the game and go to exit and get right back out to the hub, and now we can go into the next level. Level number 3 here in World 2 is pretty similar to the other ones we've dealt with. We're going to keep the bird ability and be able to fly over a lot of the enemies throughout the course of the first room. As we make it to the second room though, we will have to fly upwards, and if you stand right here between the background dark tree and the foreground tree, you'll easily be able to dodge most of the enemies while heading up. In this room here, though, you will have to battle one of the mini-bosses of the game, the Umbrella Boss here. We'll easily take him out using the Spike ability. Once he's defeated, though, we're going to ignore what's in the bag there and just immediately exit out. Now, work our way through the next screen, which will have us heading downwards, watching out for a series of the Spike enemies. And having the Spike ability with Kirby and the bird will allow us to kind of hit them from above and easily travel through the stage. The last screen here in level 3 of World 2 is another one of those really straightforward ones. We gotta head up a little bit, watching out for a few enemies, but we'll hit this and we'll move on to the boss battle here in World 2. Now, having the bird and the spike really helps us out because we'll get up in this corner here, and when the groundhog warthog boss ends up appearing, we'll be able to hit him a lot of times as soon as he ends up appearing. We'll also be able to easily dodge the projectiles that he ends up throwing out. After he does this a little bit, he will end up spawning just the little warthogs to kind of run across the screen and all, and you just have to wait for them to kind of bypass, and then we'll be able to easily start attacking him again with the spike ability to finish him off, and move on to world number 3. As you can see from the intro, world number 3 is a little bit of an underwater themed set of levels, and that means we will eventually be introduced to the fish animal friend known as Kine, the giant blue sunfish. Throughout the first part of level 1 here, though, we're going to fly on above a lot of the trees and thus a lot of the enemies as we make our way over to the far right side. A little bit ways in though, we will stop, lose our ability, which you can hit the select button in order to lose your ability, as well as you can also get rid of your animal friend by hitting select, but you have to get rid of your ability first. So basically the first select button will get rid of your ability, the second one will get rid of your animal friend, but we're just going to get rid of our ability first and grab ourselves the stone ability, as we will need this later on in order to get the rainbow shard during the course of world number 3. Be careful making your way through this section here. We can use the stone ability in order to help us take out a lot of the enemies. It can be difficult to hit enemies with the stone ability, but you have a pretty big hitbox when you do it, so it can help you as far as being able to deliver those hits to them. As we begin level number 2 here, we're going to use the stone ability to drop down into the water below, taking out all the enemies along the way. When you make it through into the next room, you'll have a bunch of currents being pushed on you from the pipes going into the spikes, so be careful of those and enter into this door here. Here you will fight one of the squid mini-bosses. This guy's pretty easy to deal with, but more importantly is the bag in his room, which contains the sunfish kind, who we will need in order to get the rainbow shard for this particular world. As to be expected, Kind the Fish does move rather poorly on land, but thankfully, when you're underwater, it's really where he gets a chance to shine. And world number 3 and 4 has plenty of water for him to shine in. There's a couple of cool rooms like this that have like that silhouette feel to them, as they're pretty dark as we're making our way through the course of them. A little bit ways in though, we're able to drop back down into the water and take the door at the far end, and then we're back outside. Like I said before, he doesn't move that great on land, but you can make do since you're able to jump, and he actually jumps pretty well, so you can still do the platforming pretty well overall. As we begin the next level, you can actually start in the water, and since we already have the fish, we're able to easily get through this section. You can pretty much just kind of get underneath or just above a lot of the enemies during this section, so you don't have to worry about taking out very many of them during it. This is the stage where we will be getting the rainbow shard for world number 3, so we had to be cautious that we're able to keep the stone ability throughout most of this. Drop down in the water here, watch out for the currents, and then go through this door here. You'll need the fish in order to do this. Up into the upper right is a hidden door. This door will lead you to this room where, if you have the stone ability, you'll be able to crash through these blocks and grab yourself the 3rd rainbow shard. Honestly, this is probably the most hidden of the rainbow shards, though it's not the most complicated to get. One later on will be a little bit more complicated in order to actually be able to get a hold of. Once we grab that rainbow shard, though, we head back out through the rooms and head back up to the top of the surface here. Have a couple of those eel enemies popping out of those pipes, but we're going to keep on heading over to the right, and we're going to keep the fish ability for now at least. Night section just has a lot of this currents being pushed on you from all of the pipes, and since we have that fish ability with the rock, we're just gonna crush them as we easily swim on through. So pretty simple area for us for the most part. After going through that pretty lengthy section, we finish up the stage and move on to the boss battle here. Keeping with the fish and with our stone ability, we can easily defeat the boss here. He's basically a giant anglerfish, and if you time the stone abilities right, you'll be able to drop down on top of him and deliver quite a lot of damage pretty easily, while also being able to easily dodge most of his projectiles. Sometimes you may need to stay as that stone ability in order to dodge some of his attacks, but once we deliver that final blow though, we're moving on to world number 4. As you can see, World 4 is an ice-themed world, and starting off with the fish, it doesn't really help us all that much, but because of the way he is, he doesn't really slip and slide on the ice all that much either. Like most of the Kirby games, the overall platforming difficulty isn't really extremely strong by any means. It is a bit difficult, of course, to find all those rainbow shards throughout the course of the levels itself. But I really didn't grow up a lot with Kirby's Dreamland 2. I feel like its landmark title for sure, introducing the animal friends and the like, but unfortunately, I had a lot more fun and played a lot more Kirby's Adventure and eventually Kirby Superstar on the SNES over playing Kirby's Dreamland 2, but it's still a great entry overall. Here we face off with the Blocky or Rocky boss, who is very similar to one of the regular enemies that's located in the Adventures of Lolo series. But here he's a little bit different to deal with overall, and we actually can defeat him, unlike with Lolo where he's unable to do that. As we begin level number 2 here, we have the snow blowing in from the left side of the screen, and thus we're able to kind of get through this area a little bit more quickly because of the breeze that's blowing. We're going to end up dropping, though, the fish during this segment so that we can end up entering inside of this door, which ends up speeding up things a little bit. If you enter into the right door, which would be fine, you'll end up getting one of the animal buddies, and you can then go into this door right here. But by negating the animal friend, we're able to easily enter inside of the door and continue on. Since we don't have an ability though, it's a little bit difficult in order to get rid of all the boxes so that we're able to make it easily through the area. When we drop into this room here though, we're going to grab the fire ability because we'll need that in just a bit so we can blow open these boxes or blocks here and make our way through the rest of the area here. As we begin next level, you can slide on down. There's kind of two paths here. They both eventually lead to the same way, just different enemies and different platforms. You can use the fireball ability pretty well in order to kind of get through this. Entering into this door will put us in a battle against Mr. Frosty, the walrus-esque boss of the Kirby universe. And he's going to try to throw blocks towards us, but every time we're doing the flame through him, he ends up stopping his attack. He'll also get mad and stomp around and then just kind of try to throw more ice blocks our way. After he's defeated, though, we're going to grab Kine the fish. Coming out of the area, though, we'll drop right down into the water, which Kine has the best maneuverability for sure when it comes to any of the animal companions. Now, right here, we're going to use the fire ability. Keep that because we're going to need it later, but we're going to blast these blocks, and you kind of have to jump and time it just right so that you're able to destroy them and keep on moving through, but you can hit them with that without having to lose your ability. Once you're done with that, head into the water. You'll break open a whole bunch more of the star blocks, so you can get to the right side where you jump up, and guess what? More of the same kind of block situation. Just do the little short hops to destroy the blocks as needed, drop into the water, and exit out the opposite side. Once you're out here, head over to the right side. Be careful of a few gaps in the platforms below. You'll also have these ones that explode after you land on them. After just a second or so, you'll have to quickly get off of them, or have to just kind of get out of the way of them and make sure you hit enough of them to make whatever path open up that you need to. This is a little tricky to keep kind during it because of the way the blocks are set up, but we're able to kind of just destroy them just enough and time it and hit that door and move on to the next level. World 4 is the first of the worlds in the game that have 4 levels. As we start the next one up, we have to deal with this guy, the fireball guy. He's going to dash all around, but take him out. You can get his ability if you still need the fire ability, as we need it a little bit later, but do not get the animal companion. Remain as kind. Going through the door there will take you to this section here with a lot of enemies and potential of getting squashed because it's an auto-scrolling stage. Something we don't see a ton of usually during the early retro Kirby games, but just try to watch out for a few of those enemies and keep the abilities that you have if possible. There's a couple of tricky areas where you have to move pretty fast because you may get squashed, but most of the area is a little bit more open up, but eventually we do make it to the end of it and move on to the next section of the level. Sometimes the jumping with kind is not that kind to you, as you have to kind of really force him up with enough momentum in order to get him to some of the higher platforms sometimes. Now, when we enter into this section, go to the left or right side. Make sure that you still have kind and that fire ability. Destroy the blocks in the center. Don't destroy the ones on the left or right side, depending upon what platform you're on, so that you can use the momentum and platform to get back up. Then drop in the water, and what you have to do is hit select to get rid of your power, but don't hit select twice after losing your power, or else you'll get rid of your fish ability. It's an absolute pain to try to get rid of your ability and grab it quickly before it ends up going away, while also making sure you don't double tap select. If you're able to get rid of the blocks though, you can jump in, finally destroy the ice here, and grab the rainbow shard for World 4. Continue on the level. You can keep the fire ability with kind. It will help you out during the boss battle, but if you do lose it, you don't have to worry about re-getting it. Just focus on finishing up the stage, go through the door at the end, and we're moving on to the boss fight. The boss for world number 4 is the Ice Dragon. He moves rather slowly for the most part, so he's able to easily get hit a lot of times with our fireball ability that we've kept over here. He dashes across the screen, but as you can see, pretty slow at trying to do just that. He'll also jump in the air, stomping the ground, causing spikes to fall down from the ceiling, so watch out for them. And other times he'll kind of just float for a few seconds before then coming back down to the ground level. Once he's done though, we're moving on to world number 5. Dropping into level 5 Red Canyon, it has 5 levels for us to complete before we end up making it to the boss. One thing that I didn't mention yet is, in order to get 100% completion in the game, you not only have to beat every level and every boss and collect all the rainbow shards for the true final boss, you also have to complete all the star-catching bonus games, which are unlocked when you beat a boss in a world. Instead of being able to face off with that boss again, instead, you get the ability to do the star-catching bonus game, where you have to collect 14 stars for 2 extra lives. You're able to complete it perfectly, and if you get that perfect, you get a percentage towards your total 100%. Getting all the levels complete, bosses done, rainbow shards collected, and the bonus games done perfectly will give you 99%. To get the other percent, you need to find the female GUI. Gooey is that blob character that you end up finding inside of a bag that an animal buddy would be if you already have that particular animal friend. So if you have Rick the hamster and go into a room where another Rick the hamster would be, instead Gooey is in the bag. And there's an alternative female version of Gooey, and finding her not only will give you an extra life, but also 1% towards making sure you get that 100% goal. All of that basically is to say that I will be doing 100% in this run. We're going to complete the entire game first, getting all the rainbow shards, and then we'll do the extra bonus games and stuff that we need to get that last couple of percentages. You really don't get anything special for getting 100%. The big special thing is getting the alternate boss and ending for the game if you end up getting all the rainbow shards. But you're able to do the bonus chance game anytime you want from the main menu. That's all that's going to get added, but I figured I'd go ahead and show it anyway. To make things easiest on you, make sure that you do your best to keep Rick the hamster now that we have him, as well as the electric ability, because these are the two things you're going to need in order to get the rainbow shard in this world. Here we are battling the ninja mini-boss, or mid-boss. Starts off, he'll jump up into the air lot and throw some blades to the left side, which you can of course suck up and use as ammo against him. He does have the color ability from him if you're able to absorb him or want to absorb him. He also will bounce along these little stars that after a few seconds will then fly up into the air. The next section right after that is another one of those auto-scrolling sections where we have to work our way through the rocky platforms. Have to move a little bit quickly, of course, and with Rick being a bigger body, with having him as our animal companion, it can be a bit more difficult to get through some of the areas. You can't quite squeeze through as easily as you can using Kirby's. A lot of times I ended up losing a life during sections like this when I was Rick. The section is also pretty lengthy, but eventually we will finally make our way through it, destroying some blocks in order to reveal the door. Level 5-3 starts off with 3 doors, and each one leads to another little mini-boss or a battle against an enemy that contains one of the animal friend bags. This is a great way to get the particular animal friend that you want, so complete the level, and then you can easily come back here, get your animal friend, and then exit out of the level and use them for if you're trying to get a particular rainbow shard or the like, or also what we'll probably do at the end of the game in order to make sure we get that female version of Gooey so we get that extra percentage towards our 100%. Making your way through this section here, drop on down into the water, watching out for the eels, and then you can use the currents from the pipes in order to push your way through. Just be careful of the spikes along the way. In the next room here, we're going to start working our way up by climbing. Watch out for the broom hatters and a few other enemies that are scattered amongst the platforms. Pretty straightforward and easy room though overall. Onwards to level number 4 here. Starts off with some platforming, so be careful not to fall down into the pits. It's very easy to do as we try to maintain having Rick with us. Lots of Bronto birds are flying all around this first section of level number 4 here. Inside here, we face off with this mini-boss who you're unable to hit while he has the spikes around him. Instead, you have to wait for him to run into the wall or throw the spikes off of him, in which case you'll then be able to deliver attacks. After a few seconds, though, he will end up regaining his spikes, and in which case you'll have to wait for him to throw them again, and then deliver your attacks. Of course, the projectile of the spikes can be sucked in order to actually damage him by throwing them back at him, and you'll get the spike ability, or needle ability, once you end up defeating him. The next section has some wind that's going to be pushing you over to the right. As you can see, snowflakes slowly falling down from the ceiling. Biggest hazards have a few enemies as well as some spikes set up that try to get in your way as you're moving, but I actually like the increase in speed for a little bit. Next up in the next room, you have more of those currents being pushed out towards you with the pipes, so they're going to be pushing you in the direction. Pretty straightforward and easy stuff, just trying to do our best to maintain both our ability and our animal friend. Here, you'll have air pushing you upwards from the pipes, and this will allow you to kind of float up into the air a little bit, and be careful coming back down a few times so you don't land on top of an enemy. At the end of this long hallway, you'll have a bunch of boxes and Scarfies, and at the very end, you have a couple of Gordos that are moving at slightly different speeds, so hit the boxes above them and all, so you can kind of get over to the right, and if you time it, you'll be able to make it through and keep your ability and your animal buddy. As we make it to the 5th and final level of World 5, this is the one that's going to contain the rainbow shards, so make sure you do your best to hold on to Rick and the spark ability. Break open these boxes down here and then head into the water, work your way around a few enemies and Gordos around here, and make it on through to the next room. At the end, take the door on the right side, you'll enter into this room. Right above you is a Sir Kibble on the platform throwing out one of his blades, which can be difficult to dodge sometimes. Also, doing high enough jumps to make sure that Rick is able to keep working his way up the platforms and doesn't end up falling down to what becomes a pit at the bottom of the screen. After a pretty lengthy segment, when you get to the top, wait for the screen to keep going, and you're going to go into the second door that's above the first one you come to. This is the room with the rainbow shard, and if you have Rick as well as if you have the spark ability, you'll be able to hit all these boxes, meet it, in order to grab the rainbow shard. Exiting out of that room will take you to this place here, and this is pretty infamous because if you follow all the boxes, they're in the shape of what looks like a female body. If you look at a picture of 5-5 from Kirby's Dreamland 2 online, you'll see a better picture zoomed out of what exactly I'm talking about. With level number 5 complete, we're moving on to the boss of World 5, Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright. Mr. Shine starts off here. He's going to try to roll into us a lot. Mr. Bright will rain down his normal kind of sparks or bright shining lights that cause stars to shoot off of them, which you can grab up and throw at them if need be. You do have to defeat both of them. They have a separate health bar from one another. When you're dealing with Mr. Bright on the ground, he'll run into the left and right sides of the screen, causing little stars to rain down, as well as he also will fire out a blast towards you. At the end of the battle, when they get really low on health, they'll kind of join together for an eclipse-like move. If you stand underneath of them, you won't end up getting hit from this, but the entire rest of the screen flashes, and if you're anywhere in that, you'll end up getting hit. With the boss defeated, though, we're moving on to World 6. As we've been seeing a single increase since World 4, World 6 now has 6 levels in it. Starting off the first stage, we have a big cloud set of platforms that will start to make our way over to the right. The rainbow shard for World 6 is also relatively complicated, not as bad as the one we got a few worlds ago, but still can be a bit of a pain in order to get it. At the beginning of the next section, there's a few platforms for you to jump between. A little ways in, you'll have the little boxes that end up exploding after you step on them for just a second, so move quickly along that set of platforms. Here you have another section like that where you can run quickly across with a bunch of the Bronto Birds flying above you. Make sure you drop down and do a little bit of a float so you're able to hit the door and then go into the next room. Here you have a few air currents that are pushing you up. If you're not careful like I am, you'll end up running into Gordos as you make your way up. Plenty of enemies to grab and get powers if you want to get them, and then go through the door at the top to finish up the stage. Level number 2 is the one that has the rainbow shard, but unfortunately we don't have Kinda Fish, who we do end up needing in order to get it. What we're going to do though is we're going to go through the level and complete it just to make things easier, this way we won't have to complete it the next time around. Then we'll exit out and go back to 5-3, get Kinda Fish, and then return here and work our way towards getting the shard. It's pretty complicated to get it, a little bit annoying as well because of the different abilities that you need, and we have to kind of change up a little bit while going through. There's another room located in this that we'll be using as kind in order to kind of get towards that rainbow shard. Work your way quickly as you can through the area. There is an animal buddy bag located in here, but we're going to ignore that and keep on going to the right side here. The next room has a big current that's pushing you from the right side and towards the left. There's a lot of Gordos and stuff that you'll have to watch out for before entering into the door. So what we're going to do in order to get the rainbow shard, you don't need Kinda Fish for the one area, but it's going to help us get the power that we need easier if we just go ahead and do the level as kind, or start off as kind. Heading back to 5-3, go through the left door with a little bit of water in front of it, defeat the enemy, and grab yourself Kinda Fish, and head on back to 6-2. Once back in 6-2, work your way through the first screen. Nothing really to worry about all that much, just there's Gordos and all, but even as kind, with him being much bigger, it's still pretty easy to get through. You can also grab one up if you need to, using the ice ability there. Once we make it to the next screen, though, we're going to be using the air currents that come out of the pipes to kind of push us upward a little bit on a few of these platforms. Thankfully, the ice ability works pretty well here as far as taking out the enemies while we do this. When you make it up to the top here, we're going to drop down in between these platforms, and this will take us into this section here. Now, the current's pushing us to the right, but using kind, we can go on over to the left side here. We're going to end up doing battle again with Master Green, the jellyfish-like mid-boss. He's going to end up giving us the spark ability by defeating him, and we'll use that to help us as far as continuing on in the level. Now, once you defeat him, take the ability, and you can get Gooey there, or another Kinda Fish, but I don't think you can get to that room, really, without kind. Maybe you're able to swim underwater quickly with the other animals, but either way, head back through and have the current now push you over to the right side. You're going to be in a mid-boss fight against Blocky. We're going to use the light bulbs, charging them up just a bit, and send them towards him. Won't take long before he's defeated. Now, once he's defeated, we're going to make sure that we keep the shock ability, but get rid of kind and grab ourselves Rick the Hamster. Now head to the door to the right, and you're going to be in this room here. Use the spark ability to destroy the blocks in order to free Coo the Owl. Now with Ku, head to the right in this screen where you're being pushed by the wind. Use the spark ability to take out the ninja guy here in order to get the cutter ability, and then we're finally going to be able to get the rainbow shard. Once you defeat the ninja and have the ability, work your way over to the left, making sure to keep hold of the ability, watching out for all the Gordos as you head this way. Eventually, you'll come to this room right here, head inside here, where you'll destroy these blocks and grab yourself the rainbow shard finally. Now at this point, we don't need to worry about any more of the animal friends as far as needing them in order to get the last rainbow shard or beat any of the other stages. Ku though helps me actually get through stages pretty quickly and efficiently, so I'm just going to stick with him for a large portion of the rest of this area. Even though he is the owl, he does work pretty well underwater, and we can actually kind of swim through it, and be able to get through areas pretty quick. I find that the spark ability using Ku is actually really effective against certain areas of the game, including also the boss of World Number 6. He works pretty well with that ability. Work your way layer by layer until eventually you're able to get to the door located here and head inside. Once here, you have to destroy the ground, and you do so by hitting those blocks that explode a few seconds after you touch them, and you have to kind of destroy a lot of them throughout here, along with other normal blocks. There's a few kind of like dead ends through this whole area as well. This is one of the good areas to have Spark with Ku, as it does help you as far as destroying a lot amount of the blocks pretty fast and working your way through the enemies. May have to do a little bit of dodging in order to try to keep our ability and keep destroying the blocks, but eventually we make it to the very bottom and move on to level number 4. Heading into level 4 here in World 6. Start off by flying over a pretty decent amount of enemies here with Ku. There's a few that we'll have to blast using our spark ability or have to dodge other ways if you don't currently have any of your abilities. Inside of this room here, we'll have to battle one of the mid-bosses, and we'll have to watch out for his spikes and wait for him to attack us so that we'll be able to attack him. Unfortunately, sometimes, like this time, he's up in the ceiling, so I can't hit him even though he is able to be hit for that couple of seconds. I wasn't able to do anything. Now, I make a mistake here. I don't end up grabbing the female GUI. Had I done that, I would already have the 100% by the time I got done the bonus games after I completed the game, but because of that, I have to actually try to get a hold of her again for me to get the 100%. The next couple of rooms are auto-scrollers. You'll have to make your way through watching out for a lot of Gordos. They separate a couple of seconds after they appear on screen, and then you're able to easily get between them. Now, on the next screen, you have a whole bunch of boxes, and you're being pushed upward from the wind below, but we'll use the spark ability, which isn't the best at this point when we're going up, but we're still able to kind of make our way through all the boxes as needed. As we begin the next level, we have a corridor with a whole bunch of these blocks that get destroyed when we touch them. We have to kind of work our way through a maze structure here. Now, you can escape damage if you destroy a lot of the blocks and kind of get past the Gordo as it goes around, but pretty much with Ku, it's just much easier to just take a couple of hits and make our way through the rest of the maze. The maze has a lot of turns through it and a ton of enemies that we'll have to deal with along the way, but eventually, though, we will make it through this section. After what seems like forever, we make it to the very top and finally can get through the door to move on to the next screen in the stage. This one has a current that's pushing us from the right to the left, but we actually have to go into it, so having an animal friend like Ku allows us to kind of get through the area a lot easier. After you go in this door, you'll have a whole bunch of other doors appear. Go through this one, and this will take you to the exits. The other ones just lead to a runaround where you'll have to keep choosing rooms and fighting little mid-bosses until you pick the right room. We start off level number 6 with a battle against Master Green, the jellyfish enemy. We don't have any of our weaponry right now, any ability, so we'll just have to face him the old-fashioned way, or at least the old-fashioned way with Ku. Once he is defeated, though, we will end up taking his Spark ability, and that'll help us through the rest of the level, and we'll use that against Krako, the boss of the world. On this screen, we have the current that will start to push us in one direction, and we go down and around, going in the opposite direction, and so on and so forth, while watching out for all of the enemies. When you make it down to the bottom of the section, head inside this door, and you'll be in this big room here. It's another pretty confusing little maze and a few dead ends and the like, but taking this path will lead you right to the door so you can continue on. The next screen will just have you start flying your way, or swimming your way up towards the sky, watching out for a bunch of enemies, and then now the end of the level where we're now moving on to the boss fight against Krako. Krako is a long-running staple boss of the Kirby's franchise, and here is a pretty decent battle against him. He starts off with just the eye kind of poking out of the cloud below that you'll have to take out first. Thankfully, using Ku, we're able to just kind of float over top of him and hit him a lot with our Spark ability, even though that's also what he has. Eventually, he'll pop out of the clouds and then start floating around in his kind of weakened state, which will go for the rest of his current health bar, but once that health bar is depleted, he'll then turn into his super version of himself and start attacking us with a little bit more power. The final part of the Krako fight has him being in his super form, a lot bigger, you have to watch out for. Thankfully, using Spark from above, we're able to hit him a lot as he does travel back and forth from the left and right sides of the screen. He'll swoop in every now and then in order to send a whole bunch of lightning towards the ground, but since we're in the air, we don't have to worry about that aspect. It's a pretty slow process trying to beat him using Spark, but at least you don't have to get into the way of most of his attacks if you're doing it this way. After a pretty lengthy fight, we're able to finally take down Krakow, and we're moving on to World 7. World 7 is the Dark Castle, has 7 levels, as at this point it's to be expected, and the 7th level is the one that ends up containing the Rainbow Shard, but you don't need anything specific, just have to use certain abilities during it that it gives you, so you don't even have to go out your way to get the abilities that you need. This first section here has a bunch of little platforms and such, and we're just going to kind of fly over them, watching out for pretty much all these enemies. The next screen is another one of those auto-scrolling style of areas. Watch out for all the spikes lining and climb up as quick as you can to the top section. We can still use the lightning ability to help us out a bit, but we have to kind of be attached to the ceiling and get lucky with some of the attacks that we're able to pull off against these enemies during this tight corridor. Each of the levels in World 7 end with a mid-boss fight, so you pretty much get to fight all the mid-bosses we've been battling throughout the game at the end of each one of these stages. Once we defeat Ifrit one more time, we're not going to worry about his ability, we're going to keep Spark for now, and move on to the next stage. As the next level begins, drop on down into the water and start working your way through. There's a good amount of enemies that are lining both the floor and the ceiling, and then a whole bunch of spikes in the next part will be dropping down from the ceiling as you make your way towards the door. The next segment gives you a good chance to get a lot of different abilities if you would like any of them, and then in the next section we're watching out for these guys as we kind of get through the spikes. You have a couple of choices. We're going to take the upper path here. This will also give you an animal friend if you want to get another one, if you don't have one or whatever. Then you can move on to the next screen, just kind of stay on the ground. Even with an animal friend, you can easily get underneath all of the spikes before they end up falling on you. And to finish up the level is another matchup against Master Green, the jellyfish. The beginning of the next stage has pretty much just a straightforward path, but you have a lot of enemies, different kinds that will be appearing, like the Caboose, you have Gordos, and a few other ones that you'll have to deal with as well. When you enter into the next room, this is another one of the auto-scrolling levels, and this one's a big pain. Using one of the animal friends is not necessarily recommended because you are so large, so it can be hard to get through this section easily. There are a few times where there are multiple paths, and unfortunately they do have some dead ends that can end up causing you to get squashed, so after getting a maximum tomato, you'll make it to this little corridor, head upwards where the Sir Kibble is, so that you make sure you don't end up getting squashed. Finally, after a while, we will come to the door and battle Mr. Frosty, and after defeating him, we're moving on to the next stage. Next up, we're moving on to Stage 4, starting off with another bridge-like segment. Watch out for some Sir Kibbles, a few of which will be direct line of sight with you, especially when you get up to that higher platform like there. This level in general is set up very much like the one we just did a few moments ago. Basically now we're just coming from the right to the left instead of going from the left to the right, and it's slightly changed up with different enemies, but you'll notice that especially when we go into this room here, we're once again in an auto-scrolling area. We have to quickly get to the top to make sure that we watch out for the spikes and deal with the enemies along the narrow corridor. At the end of the corridor, though, you'll be battling the ninja mid-boss. Once he's done, we're moving on to the next stage. Just a few levels left here in Kirby's Dreamland 2. As we begin the next level, we're going to dive through the water. There's a bunch of Gordos going towards the wall, and if you're quick, you can get past them all before they even get close to you. Continue swimming on through this area with more Gordos to watch out for, but eventually you'll come to the door. Inside here, there's another one of those rooms where you're able to get a decent amount of powers. If you would like any of them, go ahead and grab them before entering the door and making it through another hallway like this. As you can tell, level 5 is very similar to level 3. Same basic maze at the end of it that we can choose the different doors in order to make our way through. After a small hallway with a few enemies, we'll make it to the end and face off against Blocky. Pretty easy for us with the spark ability especially, but once he's done, we're moving on to level 6. Level number 6 starts us off by being pushed by the current from the right side. There's some items to grab if you want to along the way, stars, 1-ups, as well as, of course, a few enemies. The next segment is another one of the maze-like areas that have a bunch of dead ends. More dead ends than the last time we did the similar section. I ended up dying quite a few times here as a kid, as picking the wrong direction from time to time, as you have just a few moments to realize which direction is the right one to keep on going through. This is also the last really challenging area of the game. Level 7 is quite easy compared to level 6. It's actually surprisingly difficult for a Kirby game. Most of the time Kirby games have relatively lax difficulty, but I've always felt there was a few levels in Dreamland 2 that were a bit harder than normal Kirby stages. Either way, we face off with this boss at the end, just like we've been doing with the other levels, and once he goes down, we're moving on to the 7th level. As we begin stage 7, start heading on up. Watch out for a cannon and some Gordos. There's a whole bunch of spikes lining both the left and right sides here as you make your way to the door at the top. Once in here, blast your way through a series of blocks and a nice silhouetted kind of view of this level. And then this is where we're going to need to start using the special abilities. Start off by climbing up and grabbing the enemy in order to get the fire ability. This way we're going to bust through this wall on the left side and then go through to the next room. In this room, lose your power and grab the enemy here in order to get the stone ability, and then use that on the rocks on the right side. In the next room, we're once again going to be heading to the left side of the screen when we get to the top, but we're going to need a needle ability in order to do that. Once in the next room, grab Sir Kibble and get the cut ability, and we're going to use that on the last set of stones that we need to break on the top right, which will take us to the room where the rainbow shard is. So now that we have all the rainbow shards, we can now get the true ending of the game, the actual final boss encounter. Gotta finish up this stage first though before that battle will begin. Watch out for these broom hatters making my way up. I'm going to keep the cut ability, as it will help me out. We just have to defeat this mid-boss before we end up going there. Just watch out for his spinning tornado move, and of course, the projectiles that he ends up throwing out at you. It's now time for the final boss of the game. Once you're entered into the final level here, climb on up the large tower and you'll enter the door at the top to get to the battle against King DDD. DDD starts off by not really caring too much about you. In fact, he's even sleeping during a large portion of the beginning part. You'll slowly start to dwindle his health down, either by catching the stars that he ends up causing to appear multiple times that you can throw back out at him, or you can just keep using whatever ability you currently have. I'm just going to keep using Color to keep delivering attacks. The biggest thing you gotta watch out for is when he gets close to you and will try to suck you in order to throw you and do a pretty good amount of damage. He'll jump in the air with his hammer, crashing it down, causing a star to come from it. When you get him down to near the end of his health though, he'll get really angry and basically doubles or triples everything that he's doing. He starts his phase off by throwing his hammer and it explodes, which can easily hit you as it breaks apart into a few little trails of star that go out of it. He then will start running across the screen a lot quicker. He will actually try to inhale the entire length of the screen a lot of times, and just kind of either jump over him to get him to stop, or just keep waiting for him to eventually get you, I guess. Once you deliver enough hits though, if you have the crystal shards, you will now pull out the rainbow sword and go to the true final boss. Now your health does come back after the DDD fight, but you have to survive 2 boss fights here with the current health that you have. When the battle begins, this guy will start... As the battle against Dark Matter begins, he'll start off by throwing his sword up in the air, charging up a blast. If you time your swipe at him after he throws it, you can knock it back at him for a pretty good amount of damage. To time it right so that you can get all of the pieces that break off of it, that all hit them, are very, very slim, because if you interrupt him while he's doing it, he'll just give up trying to do the projectile, so you have to wait for him to kind of throw it, and time it just right as he throws it, and you can knock it back at him with all the pieces of it to do the most amount of damage to him quickly. Other than that, you of course can just run up and start to beat him down with your sword if you want to. Once the first form is done though, he goes into his true form here, and when he does this, he'll end up moving across and summon these 4 different projectiles around him. You can actually knock them back at him, so quickly get behind him and hit him, and if you do it at the right moment, you'll be able to do quite a large amount of damage to start the battle off. After a little ways into the fight, he'll start doing this move where he'll kind of go into a machine gun-like fire all the way around them. You can kind of get close or away from them just enough that you'll avoid them as they're coming out, and then you can just kind of stand there and beat on them as he gets the rest of them out. After doing a couple of dashes around the screen, he'll start working his way back up, and when he gets to the top, he'll then usually do his lightning move. The lightning move is a little bit tougher to dodge because it goes a pretty good amount of length of the screen, but you can kind of get behind him sometimes in order to keep delivering a few hits, and once he's finished off, we get to sit back and enjoy the ending to Kirby's Dreamland 2, but we're not quite done yet. Once we're at the end screen, you can press start at any point to go back to the main menu, and as you can see, we have 93% of the game complete. So we're going to drop on in and head back to world number 1 and do the star catching bonus game. Basically what this is you have to collect the 14 stars that are thrown your way. It's a kind of reimagined boss room, and some involve the boss, some involve just elements of the boss encounter, but you have to dodge all the other things coming your way and capture the stars. If you get hit just once by running into the boss or any of the projectiles or hazards, it's instantly over and you'll have to retry it. The thing is, if you fail at the game, the door closes up once you've completed it, so in order to do it again, you'll have to restart the game and come back in. Pretty simple one to start off with Wispy Wood, being able to dodge most of the apples. Some have a pretty sporadic pattern to them as they come your way, so it can be a bit tricky. The second one has the little baby boar enemies that we normally were kind of picking up and throwing at the mother during the normal boss fight if you didn't use abilities, that is. But here we have to dodge all of them and quickly grab the stars before they end up going away. This can be difficult at points and is a lot harder than the Wispy Wood one, but once we gather them all, we move on to the third one. The third one's pretty fun because we're swimming where we battle that third boss. We have to watch out for lots of Gordos as the screen scrolls by relatively quickly and gather up all the stars. It's different sporadic kind of patterns on some of the stars and the Gordos each time you end up doing it, so it can be a bit difficult and a few tight squeezes, but we're able to make it barely through and get ourselves another perfect. For this one, where we battle the Ice Dragon, we have to watch out as the ice spikes are going to be falling down from the ceiling, trying to crash on into us. The stars themselves don't go away right as they hit the ground. They kind of like bounce and then slowly work their way off the screen. So you have a few moments once they land to grab them, but it's just an extra few. And that goes for all of these particular bonus catch games. You have a second or so to get them once they hit, but you have to be pretty diligent before they end up going away. Here we have one against Mr. Shine and Mr. Bright. Here we're going to have to watch out for Mr. Shine bouncing all around, rolling across the bottom of the screen, as Mr. Bright moves himself back and forth and tries to fire down those beams towards us. This is another one of the pretty difficult ones overall, but once we finally get all of them, we're moving on to the sixth and final one of these bonus catch games. For the last one here, as there isn't one for King Dedede in the Dark Castle, you have to deal with Krako's eye kind of being popped out of the cloud below, multiple of them in this case, and grab the stars. Sometimes it's Krako's eye, sometimes it's the star, just kind of keep an eye on it. Sometimes your Kirby body can block the ones coming up, so you may accidentally get hit because of that, but just like the other ones, the stars will bounce a little bit when they hit the ground, so you have to get them quickly, but you don't have to absolutely make sure you get them before they touch the ground again. Now that we have all of them, we have 99%, but we didn't grab the girl Gooey. So to do that, we're going to go into this room here in 5-3, grab ourselves Rick the Hamster. Now that we have Rick, we're going to exit out of the stage and then go back into it, and once again go into the same room that we did before, and this time we'll get Gooey, or hopefully the girl Gooey. This may take multiple times for you to get it, for that one to finally show up, but once you've collected her once, you're good. So if you've already done it through your normal gameplay, you didn't have to do something like this, but since I missed the one that I actually did end up finding, I had to do it this way. And once I have found her, I'm going to exit out and then do a soft reset to go once again back to the main menu, and this way I can show you guys the 100% that I've done everything you can do in Kirby's Dreamland 2. The only thing that is added here for it, though, is when you select your game, you will now have the menu there for bonus, so you can do all the bonus catch games if you want to do that. But with that, guys, it's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.